And if you see a little button that asks you to accept, please go ahead and do that. So I am Marnie Smith. I'm the Assistant Director of Graduate Career Services at the Mark School of Public and International Affairs at Baruch College. With me is my colleague, Suzanne Grossman, who is the Director of Career Services and Alumni Relations at the Mark School. And we are also doing this event in collaboration with the Employer Relations Committee of NASPA. So we welcome all of our guests, all of our students, all of our staff from the NASPA schools around the nation. We are so glad to have you with us. And we have got Leah Washington from Partnership for Public Service and Jill Hyland from Partnership for Public Service, who are going to do a great presentation for us today. I think they're going to talk for about 45 minutes, and then we're going to open it up to questions, and people will be able to put questions in the chat. But without further ado, I want to go ahead and hand this over to Jill and Leah, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Marnie. It's great to be here. We're excited that we have so many participants. I am Jill Hyland. I'm a staff member at the Partnership for Public Service, and I have spent my career really helping other people in government be effective at their jobs. So I spent about a dozen years in New York City with state and local government there. I've also worked in federal consulting and have really dedicated my career to supporting public servants. I did earn a master's degree in public policy at Duke University, so I'm glad to be here with this crowd. I'm going to turn it over to Leah to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Leah Washington. I'm an associate manager for federal workforce programs here at the Partnership. I'm a graduate of Ohio State's John Glenn College of Public Affairs, so also in the public affairs realm. At the Partnership, I primarily work with colleges and universities to build pipelines of talent into the federal government and work with agencies to help improve their recruiting and hiring practices so that they can make sure they have the best and brightest people serving in government. It's great to be here with you all.
So before we get started, a word about the Partnership for Public Service, the organization that Leah and I work with. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to improving the effectiveness of the federal government. We do that in a number of ways. One, we work to attract talent and more talent to government. We develop leaders, and we also identify ways to make the government work more effectively so that the people who work in government can be more effective in their roles. We always say that good government starts with great people, and that's part of why we're here today, is to tell you about some of the opportunities that exist. We also have a Center for Presidential Transition, which is a source of nonpartisan research, forums, and other information that we make available to the public to improve the way presidential transitions happen and to make them happen more effectively. So we, as a nonprofit organization, we work with the federal government leaders. We work with campaigns and transition teams to help them transition to power. And we also work with the public to share information about, for example, how to get a job in the new administration. So we're a nonprofit. We work to support the transition efforts, and we're here in that capacity with you here today. So we are going to focus our attention today on the executive branch, so the federal executive branch. We all know it's massive, really large, over 2 million civilian employees. And that doesn't even include all the uniformed armed services members and the members of the Postal Service. So it's huge. And many people don't know that 85% of federal employees actually live outside of the Washington, D.C. area. So we are all over the country and actually all over the world. So there's so many opportunities to serve. We are going to talk about two major categories today. One are political appointees. You see at the bottom of this slide that there are about 4,000 political appointee jobs. These are the jobs that each president has the opportunity to appoint people to, and their responsibility is to help the president carry out his or her agendas. So these are temporary jobs associated with administrations. We are also going to talk about, and Leah's going to do this a little bit later, about career jobs in the federal service, which are also really great opportunities to serve and actually may help you get a political appointment in the future as well. So we're going to cover those two categories. So first, political appointments. So the president's power to appoint people it roots in the Constitution. And right now we have a little over 4,000 jobs that are dedicated to this purpose. Here's the breakdown of how those numbers add up. The most senior category of appointments are presidential appointments requiring Senate confirmation. These are all the ones you're seeing in the news. Very, very senior level people, cabinet secretaries, their deputies, the heads of independent boards and commissions and smaller agencies. So those are the most senior people. Right below that, we show that there's about 400, a little more than 400 presidential appointments not requiring Senate confirmation. This category is really for people who work in the White House, the executive office of the president, which is a little larger, includes like the domestic policy councils, National Security Council, et cetera. And also part-time commissioners for various boards and commissions. The non-career senior executive service, there's about 700 of these appointments, and people in these jobs really work alongside career senior executives in many of the agencies to actually implement programs and move things forward. So they have a very close relationship with the career civil servants, but they are at the leadership level. The largest category is what we call Schedule C appointees. Schedule C is noted for it's a schedule as part of the civil service. So Schedule C appointees, they all report to other appointees, and these jobs can change from administration to administration. Some of these are very senior level, actually, and then others of them are more junior. But if you are a person that doesn't have much government experience or doesn't have much experience at all, then the Schedule C appointments may be the types that you would be most likely to fit with, because that does include a lot of kind of entry-level jobs. So you can find out a lot more about political appointments through our website, readytoserve.org. So we launched this website in August because we know that there are so many people who are interested in serving in the administration, but don't know how to go about it. Information is not readily available on these political jobs. It's not like the career jobs where there is a website where you can go and find all the open positions. And the information about these jobs have been really scattered among different agencies, and it's not been very transparent. So we've undertaken this, this effort to help the thousands of people who really want to serve. We know that in the first year of the Obama administration, more than 300,000 people applied for these 4,000 positions. I don't have the figures on the current administration, how many applications they've received, but certainly it's a large number. Many people want this information. So here's the one of the big takeaways from our presentation is go to readytoserve.org. You will see lots of resources. We have tips. We have podcast interviews with former appointees, with people involved in the hiring process. We have blogs, lots of things that you can take advantage of. And so you'd really want to take a look at this website. One portion of our website is really devoted to exploring job opportunities. How do you find out what kinds of jobs there are? Well, the best source of information is what we call the Plum Book. This is a publication issued by Congress every 4 years, and it provides a list of all the political appointment positions in the executive branch, also in the legislative branch, along with the incumbent's name, what their pay level was, what their duty station or location is. And so it's a great source of information of people who have had these jobs and what the jobs have been at a point in time. So the 2020 Plum Book gives you a snapshot of what the jobs were as of the end of 2020. So that's an important source of information. We'll go into that in a minute. Also, the publicly available is the annual report to Congress on White House personnel. You can Google this, all of this stuff you can Google, and we are also going to send out our presentation, make that available to you so you'll have all the links. This annual report to Congress shows all the people who work in the White House, what their titles are, what their names are, what their salaries are. So you also get to research those kinds of jobs. So these are two sources that you can use. The Plum Book, here is an excerpt of it. Once you find the Plum Book, you can search for it. It's a big PDF. And it's organized by agency. So you can look under particular agencies that you're interested in. Here is an example from the Department of Commerce. And this is from 2016. So, oh no, this is from the 2012 version. But what you see here is the list of positions, the name of the incumbent, so you can see who held that job, the type of appointment. There's a key in the front where you can see if they're a Schedule C or if it's a non-career SES position, the pay plan, which you'll also be able to look up online, and then their grade or pay. So why is this important? Even though it's historical information, it's really the best source of information we have to learn what kinds of positions are likely to be available in an administration. So it helps you to conduct historical research. So we recommend that people take a look at the Plum Book, take a look at the agencies you're interested in, the kinds of jobs that are in each agency. It will give you a good sense of that. Some of these jobs will be consistent from administration to administration. So for example, here, the Department of Commerce will always have a secretary, and there probably will be a chief of staff in every administration. Many jobs, especially Schedule C jobs, are very specific to an administration. So they may change depending on the needs. So for example, there are many more COVID-related jobs in this administration than there have been in the past. The president does have the authority to kind of shape the positions, especially in Schedule C positions, for things that are not in statute. So keep that in mind, that it does change. So many of you may know this already. You can go to the White House website and actually apply for a political appointment. So what this is at this link, you will be asked to upload your resume and a cover letter. You'll also be asked to select your desired function. If, for example, are you interested in something related to like legal affairs, legislative affairs, management, finance, your policy area of interest? Many policy areas are listed. You would check those off, and also department or agency. So you can check as many as you'd like to indicate your flexibility. All of them are listed. So what we have heard from people who are working on the transition team and with the administration is once you apply at this website, you don't need to apply multiple times. They have your information. In addition, if you applied through the Biden-Harris transition team website prior to inauguration, they also have your information and you don't need to apply again. And many people apply through many sources. There are organizations around that represent certain groups that will help get your resume into the administration. So some of you may have applied to some of those. An example is Women in National Security, an organization that is dedicated to getting more women in national security. They have worked with applicants and actually delivered some of those resumes to the administration as well. But you definitely have to apply here if you want to be considered. Just so you know, all federal employees need to undergo a background investigation to make sure that they are suitable for federal employment. And some investigations are much more lengthy, especially if they involve national security. These are forms that are available on the Ready to Serve website. You can also Google them, and you can find out the types of information that they ask. It's very, very extensive, pages and pages of information about where you've lived in the past, your former employers, your former landlords. They will ask you for friends. And investigations are conducted by the FBI, the Department of Defense, and other investigative agencies. So that's just a part of the process that you need to be aware of. It's good to look at this information in advance so you know exactly what kinds of information is being asked, and always include full, complete, and truthful responses to all these forms. It's better to provide more information, not withhold anything, because in the vetting process, if things are missing, that may raise more red flags than if you had disclosed things. Many things that you might be nervous about, if you disclose them, they often can be addressed. And so that's the important thing, is just to make sure you're honest and truthful and fill out your forms completely. This happens after you are offered a position. In addition, there are also financial disclosure requirements. The purpose of these is to make sure that individuals who serve in the government are able to put the public's interests above their own personal financial position and their own interests. So employees are asked to disclose their financial arrangements. And they do that through special White House questionnaires. And then these forms that are also publicly available, the 278 and the 450. And these forms will ask you for a lot of information. They should be pretty simple to fill out if your assets are relatively small and your personal finance situation isn't overly complex. If you do have a lot of assets and you do have lots of arrangements like trusts and family businesses and things like that, they may take you a little bit longer to fill out. But the important thing is to disclose everything and really take a look at these forms just to get a sense of the kind of information that is being asked. So I want to recap, and then we're going to go over to career appointments. So make sure to visit the readytoserve.org website. This is a front to back description of the process. Look at the Plum Book and try to identify areas of interest so that if you are called for interviews, you are much better prepared to be able to say what kinds of agencies, what kinds of policy areas, what kinds of jobs you are interested in. You have to help the Office of Presidential Personnel fit you somewhere. And so it's best for you to have done your research, done your homework in advance so you can speak to them about what really interests you. We have one former PPO director who said, we are not a job counselor. So they are not prepared to help you find what you're looking for. You need to come to the table with some information. If you haven't done so, submit your resume to the White House website, and then gather the information you need for the background investigation and financial disclosure forms. If you are given an offer, you may have only 24 to 36 hours to fill out these 100-page forms. So you have to have all your information at your fingertips. So you need to dig up your records and familiarize yourself with what's being asked so that you can respond promptly if you are given an opportunity. And finally, when we have interviewed past appointees and asked them, what do you wish that you had known? What advice do you give to people who are seeking appointments? They have told us to exercise patience, humility, and an openness to share, to serving where needed. We will have time to address questions in the Q&A, and I look forward to hearing what's on your mind, what other questions we can answer. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Leah, who is going to describe some interesting opportunities in career jobs. And we have learned that many, many political appointees got their start in career jobs, have experience working in these other areas. So if you're not able to get a political appointment now or in the next year, please know that there are many people who start in other places in the federal government and other places and wind up as political appointees. So over to you, Leah.
Jill. So as Jill mentioned, there's over 2.1 million civilian employees in the federal government. So only 4,000 political appointees, that leaves opportunities for many other types of careers in the federal government. So I'm going to briefly explain what a career in the federal government could look like for you, as well as the best ways to get into government without having a political appointment. So you can see on this slide just some of the many opportunities that are available within any given agency. The federal government is the largest employer in the country, so there's no shortage of opportunities within it. There are over 370 agencies and subcomponents across the country.
Oh, hey, Leah, it's Marnie. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I'm wondering, we are having trouble hearing you through the audio. It's kind of distorted.
Yes, okay. We've been having these issues on our partnership computers, so apologies for the difficulties. Let me drop off.
Thanks, everybody, for your patience. This has to happen at least once every Zoom call. We all know that, so we're going to check the box for today.
So I know one of the things that Leah often emphasizes in her presentations is that many of us think about the policy jobs that are available in government because we are interested in a particular issue area, or we have a policy concern, we're passionate about public health or the environment, things like that. What's important to remember is there's so many people and positions that it takes for the government to function well. And if we can't execute really effectively, then the policy isn't as useful. So we take a broad look at all the different kinds of jobs that are available in government. And there's many of these that are really crucial needs. There are shortages of people in human capital, in cybersecurity, in information technology, among others. So we spend a lot of our time working with people who have those kind of interests to help them see what kind of contribution they can actually make in the federal space. And often there are things that they hadn't even thought about.
Thanks, Jill.
Okay, there she is. I didn't do it as great as Leah would have done it.
No, and I apologize for the technical difficulties. Can you all hear me better now?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so kind of picking up where Jill left off. Yes, there's many opportunities within the federal government. And the main point that we're trying to get across with this slide is that there's many different ways that you can come into government. A lot of you have masters in public policies or public administration, which is wonderful. But even if you have a more technical degree or kind of want to carve out a different path, there's opportunities that exist in government for you. And then, as I was mentioning, with the over 370 agencies and subcomponents across the country, there's no shortage of opportunities. Thank you, Jill, for covering most of this slide. We can go to the next one. So as I mentioned, there's many different ways to get into the federal government. We'll talk about the main way, which is Usajobs, but there's a lot of other entry points that might be really beneficial for you. The first one is internship and fellowship programs. So specifically the Pathways programs, which came about under the Hiring Reform Initiative 2010. It's an umbrella term for 3 different programs, and the main one that would be of interest to you all would probably be the Presidential Management Fellows Program. One large benefit of this program is that if you successfully complete it, you're eligible for conversion into the federal government, which means that the agency may hire you as a full-time employee. This is not always the case with internship programs. In fact, it's relatively rare, which is why we always recommend Pathways internship programs as a good first step for anyone hoping to enter the federal government as more of a career move. So the Presidential Management Fellows Program is a leadership development program at the entry level for advanced degree candidates. Created more than 3 decades ago, this program attracts and selects from among the best candidates and is designed to develop a cadre of potential federal government leaders. So this program is really built with the intention of making future government leaders. It's not supposed to be just a one-time thing. They really want to funnel people full-time into the federal government. You're eligible for this program if you have completed within the last 2 years an advanced degree, so a master's or professional degree, and you may apply for the PMF program more than once as long as you still meet the eligibility criteria. So if you graduate this year and you apply this year but don't make it, you're still eligible for the following year. Once you become a PMF finalist, after you apply to the program, a whole host of jobs are opened up just to PMF finalists. So it's really a good way to see which agencies are hiring and get kind of that first chance at a job. The PMF program doesn't just work with one agency, it works with agencies across the government. So this is a program that we highly, highly recommend. Applications are only open for 2 weeks in the fall. It's a very quick turnaround period, usually in October. And so we just recommend checking OPM's website often to see when those applications open. Jill, we can go to the next slide. So I'll just briefly cover other internship programs. I won't go in as much depth, but if you have questions about them at the end, please do let us know. So the next one that we'll cover is the White House Fellowship Program. So this is one of government's most prestigious programs. It's founded in 1964 by Lyndon B. Johnson, and it is really designed to offer exceptional young candidates firsthand experience working at the highest levels of federal government. So these fellows, instead of just working within an agency, might work as a fellow under the White House staff, cabinet secretaries, and other top-ranking government officials. Again, with this program, there's a leadership development component. So fellows will participate in an education program that consists of roundtable discussions with leaders from both private and public sectors, trips to US policy and action. So they do domestic and international trips. And fellowships for this program are on a nonpartisan basis. So even though you're working directly for an administration, it's still awarded on a nonpartisan basis. This program is designed for young leaders. There is no necessarily age requirement. You do have to have your degree, but after that, it's open and the only requirement is young leaders. Next slide. Again, this is just a host of other internship and fellowship programs that you can consider. So the Cybersecurity Talent Initiative is for those who are more technical in nature, studying cybersecurity. That's an opportunity to work for the federal government for 2 years and then the private sector for 2 years. So the Partnership for Public Service runs this program, as well as MasterCard, Microsoft, and Workday. So you have the opportunity to get experience both in the public and private sector. The Rosenthal Fellowship in International Relations is for graduate students studying international relations, as the name suggests. This is a summer opportunity to work in a federal agency or on the Hill, specifically on a topic focused on IR. The Civic Digital Fellowship is also a fellowship for technologists to get experience in the federal government, really similar to the Rosenthal Fellowship in that it's a 10-week summer opportunity for students or recent graduates. And then there's a whole number of other entities like the Partnership for Public Service, nonprofits who host internship and fellowship programs for specific subsets of people. So the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities is just one example, and they have a national internship program. So we put that on the slide just to encourage you to check out nonprofits or other organizations that might host fellowships and get your foot in the door in federal government. We can go to the next slide. The final thing we'll talk about before we get into Usajobs is just other ways to find executive branch jobs. So agency websites and social media are a really great way to start your search into federal careers. Many agencies have their own website where they post their job opportunities. For example, careers.state.gov is one of the best examples. The State Department is really great at showing all of the opportunities that they have within their agency, and you can go on and see what interests you directly. We also encourage you to explore local and virtual federal hiring events. So agencies will often attend hiring fairs to tell you more about what their agency does. This is a really good opportunity to talk to someone directly in federal government. Because there's so many different agencies and so many different subcomponents, it's really good to talk to somebody who already works in the agency to get a better understanding of their mission and what exactly it is that they do so that you're better prepared to apply. We've already talked about government internship and fellowship programs, whether that be through the federal agencies themselves. So many agencies will have their own internship programs that they run, or through your university or through third-party entities like the Partnership for Public Service. And then we've listed several other third-party entities whose mission it is to get students into government. Government service programs, this is just another plug that we like to put out. So if you're interested in doing a service program like Peace Corps or AmeriCorps, that's a really great opportunity to get into federal government. Not only are you getting the experience in public service, but you also might have hiring preference when you come back from those experiences. So specifically with Peace Corps and AmeriCorps, you might actually be preferenced for certain federal jobs because you have that experience. And you don't have to compete with the general public for those jobs. So that's just another way to have a leg up if you are already considering doing a program similar to this. And then we'll talk about gogovernment.org at the end. So we can go to the next slide. So through all the things that we just mentioned, usajobs.gov is really the best place. Internships and fellowships are all wonderful, but eventually you will probably likely encounter usajobs.gov. So this is government's one-stop shop to federal hiring. This is not only a job posting board, but it's also the actual application portal that agencies use. So I'm sure many of you have experience using this, but we'll just give a brief overview of the ways that you can use it on the next slide. So the first thing that you can do on USA Jobs is search for positions. So in theory, all federal agencies are posting positions that are open to the public on USA Jobs. There's many different ways that you can search. You can go on USA Jobs and you can make a profile and select filters that apply to you. So for example, if you are a student who's coming back from Peace Corps, you can check that on USA Jobs and it will show you positions that are giving hiring preference to returning Peace Corps volunteers. You can search that you're a recent graduate or a student and you'll see those student and recent graduate positions. You can also search by GS level, which is something that's really important. So many of you will be coming in at the GS 9 or 11 level. So you can search for positions at that level. So really, it's a way to kind of tailor your search. They will also often post jobs that are specific, that they're hiring for specific reasons. So there's right now a page where there's open opportunities to help in the coronavirus response. So you can always see what their main priorities are and where they really need talent and where you're most likely to get a job. Also on USA Jobs, you can create your federal resume. So if you've never created a federal resume before, this is a little bit different than a private sector resume. It's a little bit longer, contains a lot more detailed information, and there's a really specific format that you want to follow to create your federal resume. USA Jobs has a feature where you can create your federal resume directly in USA Jobs, and it will prompt you to enter specific information in the way that agencies need to see it. So that way you don't have to kind of create your own and just hope for the best. You can really just do it exactly the way that they want to see it. This is really important. We attended a webinar with OPM once, and they said that your federal resume is your federal application. So you'll want to make sure that that's done to the best of your ability when you're applying to federal jobs. The third step that you can follow on USA Jobs is completing the application questionnaires. So you can, again, apply for jobs directly through USA Jobs. There's a job announcement that will tell you everything that you need to submit to apply beyond your federal resume. So often they will require transcripts or additional questions or just additional steps that they want you to follow. You can read all of that on the job announcement and complete all of that through USA Jobs directly. Once you've submitted your application, you can also follow up with the agency. So USA Jobs has a tracker where you can see where your application is at different steps. So you can see when it's been received, when it's being reviewed by the hiring specialist, when it's been referred, et cetera, all through USA Jobs. And finally, there's some contact information for each job announcement, so you know who to reach out to if you have questions about that job. All this to say, we highly recommend creating a usajobs.gov profile. It'll be really easy to store your search filters, to save your federal resume, to track jobs that you've liked. You can, if you're not ready to apply for a job yet, you can mark it for later. So highly recommend checking out USA Jobs. Next slide. And then the final thing I'll mention, just because we want to make sure we save lots of time for questions, is gogovernment.org. So this is the Partnership for Public Services one-stop shop for all things federal hiring. So Jill mentioned Ready to Serve, which is for all things political appointments. Gogovernment.org is for all things federal hiring, non-political appointments. So everything that I've talked about on USA Jobs is on gogovernment.org. There's tips on how to create your federal resume and points to keep in mind of when you're looking for your fit in federal government. Also on that website is a section we call the career guide. So if you're wondering where you might fit into the federal government, wondering how to use your degree, or looking for jobs that interest you, the career guides are really great because they show you specific job examples that exist within federal government and just kind of the percentage of agencies that are hiring for a specific talent. So for example, if you're a technologist wondering where you fit into government, your career guides will show you real jobs that exist that you could apply to. So definitely recommend checking out gogovernment.org. And then the final thing that I'll mention before we go into questions is if you ever need any other resources, we definitely recommend agency websites as the first place to go, gogovernment.org, USA Jobs Help Center, and then finally OPM. They have an outreach@opm.gov email address that they're kind of the premier agency for all things federal hiring. So definitely recommend checking out OPM's website. And that is it for me. And I will pass it back to Jill and Carter, who's going to help us facilitate questions.
Thanks so much, Leah. And I want to also just thank again the Mark School and Baruch College for hosting us. We're so glad to be here. So my colleague Carter, has been monitoring the chat to look for questions. And so I'm wondering if you have any good ones for us. I'm sure they're all good, but.
Absolutely. Let's start out. We had a question early on about people who applied to a job in the administration in the transition, and basically how long that application will still be eligible. And so that person was looking to see if they need to reapply, or if that resume or application will run out at any point.
So we don't have information that it will expire at any point. So if you did apply through the transition team, the Office of Presidential Personnel that is in charge now that they are the Biden administration is in office, has that database. It's one database. They've migrated it over to the Office of Presidential Personnel. So we have heard that one doesn't need to apply multiple times. They have said they are not able to get back to everybody who has applied because of the volume, and they are only able to get back to people who are going to move forward in the process. However, there is no set period of time. Many people get jobs 6 months after inauguration, 12 months after inauguration, 18 months. So one important point to keep in mind is this is not the only opportunity now. There's a lot of excitement now because there has been a change of administration and there's a lot of hiring going on. But there is turnover. People do in these political appointment jobs move around. The midterm elections are happening in 2 years. And you have to take kind of the long view of it. So after you've applied, we also recommend that you continue to do your networking. So that is trying to identify people who may know other people in the administration and meet with them and say, who else do you know in the administration? Talk with people about some of the jobs that are available, do informational interviews, do all those things while your application is in. So no expiring, but I just wanted to give a plug for considering the entire 4 years as an opportunity.
That's great. And you answered a few of my next questions.
Okay.
That's great. The next question I have here, there's a few questions that came across about international students or folks who are not yet citizen of the US applying for jobs in the administration. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about eligibility for applying for a job, and if those things would preclude someone from working in the administration.
Mm-hmm. So I'll address the political appointments, and then Leah, I'll turn it over to you for career jobs. So generally, people are considered if they are citizens or nationals of the United States. And so that doesn't mean that there aren't exceptions to that rule when there's particular needs. Each agencies may have waivers for that, but many, if not most of the jobs are for people who are citizens or nationals. Leah, how does it work on the career side?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, it's very similar. Most opportunities in the federal government are only open to U.S. citizens. This can vary job to job, agency to agency. So definitely recommend checking out the job announcement for all the positions that you're interested in. It will explicitly state whether it's open to non-U.S. citizens or not. I will say you might have a little bit of a better chance with some of the internship and fellowship programs than the full-time positions. But again, always just read the job announcement and you'll know.
Great. So I have a question on the topic of eligibility, one for you, Leah, and one for you, Jill. Leah, for you, there's a few questions about GS level and what criteria goes into GS level. So could you talk a little bit more about what considerations and what educational backgrounds go into someone's GS level?
Yes, and that's a really good question, and I'm glad you asked it. So thank you to whoever asked that question. So GS level can be based off of multiple different things. Mainly, it's going to be education and work experience. So the education is a little bit more cut and dry. So generally, to qualify for a GS5 level, you need a bachelor's degree. So that's kind of the starting level that we usually talk about when talking to students. If you have a bachelor's degree with high academic standing or superior academic achievement is what they call it, which really just means a 3.0 or higher, then you are eligible for a GS7 level. For a master's degree, you'll come in at a GS9 level, and then a doctoral degree, you'll come in at a GS11 level. So those are the equivalents for education. And this is all on gogovernment.org and also on OPM's website. These levels get a little bit less cut and dry when you're factoring in experience. So for example, if you have a master's degree, you may automatically qualify for a position as a GS9 as long as that position is relevant to what you got your degree in. But if you have 10 years work experience, they're not going to put you still at a GS9 because you only have that master's degree. So work experience can really compound with education to get you at those higher levels. We just use kind of the baseline level. So if you're just graduating with no work experience, you'll likely qualify at a GS9 level. So that's a really great question. So also in the job announcement, you can read if there is like work experience that you can use to qualify, what sector, what types of jobs qualify as work experience.
Thanks so much. That was really helpful. And for Jill, one more question on eligibility. We have a question about how the question reads, the current administration has made commitments for DEI. Does that include folks with disabilities? So I didn't know if you could talk a little bit about applying to the administration and if folks with disabilities are able to apply for these positions as well.
Yes, absolutely. So I don't speak on behalf of the administration, so I don't know what their intent is. I've read also public announcements of that. So everybody is highly encouraged to apply. There are questions on the form on the White House website where you can express your interest in bringing diversity to the administration. So absolutely, there's no, you're absolutely eligible to apply with a disability, and they're looking at people from all walks of life, and also absolutely, I would encourage you to apply.
Great. And then I'm just looking through the questions, more questions here. Looks like we have a few questions, Leah, for you about internships and I guess what education level they tap out at, if the President Management Fellows are open to, I guess, what education level, and if there's an easy way to find sort of what's appropriate based on your educational background.
Yes, that's a good question. So let me put in the chat. PMF has a specific page on eligibility. It's just the Become a PMF page /eligibility that lists out all those requirements. But in general, if you've completed an advanced degree within 2 years of applying to the program, then you'll be eligible for the program. So when the program first started, it was really limited to those with a master's in public policy or public administration. But since its inception, it's kind of broadened its horizons and is now looking for people with all sorts of advanced degrees. So masters in pretty much any subject, PhDs and JDs are all eligible to apply for this program. And then I think I saw a question about the 2 years requirement. So they'll list, once the application opens, the exact graduation dates for when you're eligible. So for the 2020 cycle that just closed last fall, it was anywhere between September 30th, 2018 and September 30th, 2020. If you graduated within those dates, you were eligible to apply, whether you had applied before or not. So they have really specific graduation dates. So unfortunately, it's hard to say if I graduated generally and in 2020 or 2018, am I eligible? You'll have to look at those specific graduation dates.
What, Carter? Looking at other questions, I'll tick off a couple of these that I saw. Some folks said that they already have a security clearance. Do they still need to get one? Yes, you need to submit the SF-86 again. It should be easier because you've submitted that information before and you just have to update it. But they do a check for your current situation. So yes, you need to get a clearance again. But it should be easier for you if you've already been through the process, and it should cut down on the length of time as well. And then there was a couple questions related to private sector experience, and is that valued as much as public sector experience? And certainly there's lots of positions for political appointees that involve having where you benefit from having lots of private sector experience. And also benefit from having state and local experience too, or nonprofit experience. It depends what the job is, but often political appointments are filled from people who spend time in the private sector and then come in for various administrations, or they spend time in a nonprofit organization. So for political appointments, you apply or you push your resume, and then depending on the position, the HR folks in the agency will help map you to a GS level or the particular pay level, and private sector experience is definitely included in their assessment of pay levels and grade levels and things like that.
Great. There's another question here earlier on about ways that you can stand out. As you mentioned, there's an incredible amount of applications that the administration has to read. Do we have any suggestions on ways that candidates should stand out or network prior to or during the application process?
Carter, that's for political appointees? Yeah.
For political.
Yeah. Okay. So networking, those rules definitely apply. It's very competitive, as you can imagine. Just looking at the number of slots available, there are about 4,000 positions overall. News reports on Inauguration Day said that more than 1,200 people already were sworn in that day, and those did not require Senate confirmation. So there are many positions that have been filled. So they're highly desirable. So it is competitive. So some of the things that you can do is work your own network. If you feel like you don't have a lot of experience and you don't have a personal network, you start with who you do have, and asking for informational interviews. Do you know anybody in the administration that could help connect me with other people that are working there? And then asking them, who do you know that works in the administration? And explaining to them what your interests are and what your agency targets are, and then also going to the next person. So even you might know people who have worked on Capitol Hill. Ask them, do you know anybody that has worked in these agencies, in the administration that I should talk to? So it's that constant networking. We also have heard from former appointees that letters of recommendation from members of Congress also do help. So that is something that you can advocate for you. Usually that's after you make it through the first round and you actually get outreach from the Office of Presidential Personnel or an agency. That's the time to bring in these other recommendations that you have. Those certainly hold a lot of weight. But yes, it is a special category. The jobs are not listed on a website that you apply for. So it is a matter of applying and then also working your network. And also be patient. I just want to say this again, another plug for, in a year, there will be more jobs open. There may be in 2 years, in 3 years. And some of these other positions that Leah covered, many political appointees started as presidential management fellows or started in other jobs. They worked at OMB or other places. They worked on the Hill. They worked in the private sector. They worked in policy organizations around Washington, and then they became political appointees. So if you take the long view of it, there is lots of opportunity.
That's great. And on the topic of some of the opportunities available, Leah, I was wondering, there's a question about if any internships would be in person. And I guess this can also address, will any of these internships or opportunities indicate whether they're in person right now during the pandemic, or is it virtual work? I think touching on some of the pandemic related topics is probably relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, a really good question, one that I wish I had a straight answer to, but unfortunately I do not. So we're working with several agencies right now to kind of figure out what the status is. Most agencies are still operating under a maximum telework status. So most agencies are still working remotely, have not returned to the office. Again, this can depend on your interests. So more of the intelligence community agencies have begun to return to the office, whereas some agencies have figured out if their work is non-classified, they can do it mostly remote without any issue. And so they're in no rush to go back. So it kind of depends on the function of the agency. I will say many are still figuring out exactly what their internship programs are going to look like for the summer. But since we've been in this for a year, they have gotten better at hosting virtual internships. So last year, a lot of agencies actually, unfortunately, had to cancel their internships, whereas this year they're going forward with them remotely because they've built up that capacity. On a job announcement on Usajobs, it will actually tell you if a job is open to telework or not. So definitely recommend reading the job announcement and reaching out to the contact, because we've heard from several different hiring managers that even if a job right now doesn't say it's open to telework, that might have changed due to COVID, and they're being a lot more flexible. So always recommend reaching out to that hiring contact that's listed on the job announcement. And then finally, even if agencies are hosting remote internships or in-person internships right now, there's still that opportunity to get a remote internship. So definitely always just recommend talking to the person doing the hiring.
Thanks so much. Let's see what other questions. And also just to mention, we will be sending the list of links and resources after this. I see there's a few questions here about where to find some of this information. So we'll send that in a document after the presentation.
I'm going to answer a question about federal resumes that's come up, I've seen. And that is, as Leah explained, on USA Jobs, there is a specific resume format that's very detailed. When applying for the career jobs, you need to create a federal resume that is very extensive. For applying for political appointments through the White House, you do not need to have that extensive of a resume. Kind of a resume that you would use to apply for a nonprofit or private sector job would be sufficient to get an interview. If you are extended an offer, you may need to provide some more information, but just so you know, a certain resume format is not required for the White House position. The White House application process.
Thank you for that clarification, Jill.
All right, any other questions? Let's see. I'm scanning the list. Anything you want to answer, Leah?
I see a good question about how the federal government calculates seasonal internships as years of experience. That's a really great question that we often get of, do internships count as work experience? Yes, absolutely, they do. The government usually calculates work experience. We say years, but for programs that are eligible conversion, they actually do it by hours. So the number of hours that you worked in the government. You don't have to worry about calculating the exact number of hours that you work. But just know that internships do count towards years of experience, and they will add that all up when you're applying for a job. So I think that's a really good question. Definitely go for the internships.
All right. Well, there's a lot of exciting opportunities out there. So the federal government needs great people, and there are a lot of different ways to serve. And Leah covered some of those. Also, there's a lot of organizations that work with the federal government, where nonprofits and other organizations where you can get exposure to some of the issues the federal government is working on. Let's see, any other, so Marnie or Suzanne, any other things that you'd like us to cover? I think we covered most of the questions.
Yes, you did a great job covering questions. If folks have additional questions, is there like a general email that they might be able to write to with their questions?
Mhm.
And if so, maybe we can put it in the chat.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So for the political appointments process, we have a website, email address that Carter will put in the website, ready to serve at ourpublicservice.org. This email address is also on the readytoserve.org website, so you'll see it there, but he'll put that in the chat for you. We can answer questions about the process and about how things work, the requirements, and all of that. We are not able to answer very individual specific questions about career counseling. You definitely take advantage of your career services offices for that counseling. And don't send our resume either. We got a lot of resumes there, but we are not the administration. We are a nonprofit working to provide information. So the resume goes on the White House website. So there's that. Yes, please feel free to ask questions about the process. We want to get the information out to everyone.
Okay. And is it okay for students to request to link in with you, or is that going to be overwhelming for you guys?
I usually link in with people that I know that I've met. That's my LinkedIn policy. So, but I'm willing to talk to folks, and you can find our information on the website. If you want to, have a separate conversation, you can address it through the Ready to Serve email and get to me that way.
Okay, great. Anything else in the chat that we want to go over, or are we good?
There's one more question here, just looking through, and this can be both for Leah and Jill, about cover letters and when they're optional, if you should include them, and just if you have any guidance on, we've talked a little bit about the resumes, but if you have any guidance on the cover letters for these positions.
Leah, do you want to start first?
Sure. So cover letters are generally optional when applying through Usajobs. We recommend submitting a cover letter when you have something different to say than what's in your federal resume or what they ask on the application. So because the federal resume is so detailed, we tend to advise people not to just kind of repeat their resume on their cover letter. But cover letters are a great way to bring out, if you have hiring preference. So for example, if you are a returning Peace Corps member or have some other sort of hiring preference, a cover letter is a great place to talk about that. Also a great place to talk about how your work experience matches this position if it's not clear on the federal resume. But in general, cover letters are optional. We just advise to not repeat what's on your resume. That's a good question.
Of course, we'll say something different for the political appointment because you don't have a position description that you're writing to, that you can respond to on the White House website. You check off boxes about your interests. So we do recommend a cover letter because that also demonstrates extra effort, and it helps explain your resume a little bit more because you don't have much detailed resume and you don't have a detailed job description either. So it's a nice way to make a personal touch. It is not required, but I would personally recommend one.
Excellent. Any final burning questions we should get to? Or I do know that it's 1 o'clock and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I see a lot of folks already saying thank you in the chat.
Oh, we thank everybody for their interest. Oh, Emma is raising her hand, but she's on mute.
I'll unmute her.
Hi there. I just wanted to ask that in person if that's all right, because typing felt like we didn't have enough time. I was just going to ask about how do you know if there's questionnaires in the federal job application portal? Sometimes they kind of spring those on you and they can be really long and it can be difficult to have time for those. And I was just wondering, this was a technical question, so I thought I could ask this right when everyone's leaving. Some people may not be interested in the answer. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Unfortunately, like so many other answers I give, I'm so sorry. It's hard to tell. It's hard to say, depending on the position. So our number one, like first and foremost piece of advice is always to just read the job announcement as thoroughly as possible. Hopefully, and what we're trying to get, we work with agencies a lot to try and get them to this point. Hopefully they're including everything that you'll need to apply on that job announcement up front. You can also, if you have a profile on Usajobs, you can start an application, save it, and come back to it later. So that's also an option if you encounter a long questionnaire. We just recommend that you read when the job announcement is closing. So that way you make sure you go back to it on time. But unfortunately, I don't have like a surefire way to know if there's going to be more information required.
Okay, amazing. This has been so helpful and invaluable. Thank you so much, Jill and Leah and Carter, for being here with us. We really appreciated having you and having you walk us through this process. I'm sure you're going to get a bunch of emails to your email address, and we hope to see you soon, and maybe we can do a part 2. Because there's so much interest in this topic, and we have so many great candidates for the new administration.
Absolutely.
So thank you. Please, everybody, join me in thanking our lovely panelists.
Thank you all, and for your interest in public service. We appreciate that.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care, be well, stay healthy, stay safe. Okay. Thank you.